How did a friend accidentally turn you on? Oh man, this still haunts me to this day. Back in college, I had this friend, let's call her Emily. She was one of the guys always hanging out, playing video games, cracking stupid jokes. I never saw her as anything more than a friend, and I was pretty sure she felt the same way about me. One night, a group of us were hanging out in my dorm watching a horror movie. The room was small, so we were all kind of crammed together on my tiny couch. At some point, there was a super intense jump scare, and Emily, who never gets scared, literally yelped and grabbed onto my arm. Not just a little grab, I mean full on digging her nails into me, her face half buried in my shoulder. I don't know what kind of primal brain chemistry kicked in, but my body was like, hey, this is nice. And listen, it wasn't just that she grabbed me, it was the fact that she was breathing heavily, clinging onto me, and then the worst part, she looked up at me and laughed, all embarrassed. That stupid little giggle, the kind that girls do when they're flustered but trying to play it off. I was done. My entire system malfunctioned. I had never once thought about her in that way before, but in that moment my brain rewrote history and decided she was the most attractive woman alive. And the worst part? She had no idea what she had just done to me. She kept watching the movie like nothing happened, while I sat there questioning my entire existence. Nothing ever happened between us, but for weeks after that, I couldn't even look at her without my brain reminding me of that moment. So yeah, 10/10 accidental turn on. Well played, Emily, well played. So, this happened back in my early 20s. I had this super close friend, let's call her Maddie. We had that kind of dynamic where we could joke about anything, call each other at 3 a.m., and spend hours just talking about life. Purely platonic, no weird tension, no hidden crushes. At least, that's what I thought. One night, a bunch of us went out for drinks. Nothing crazy, just some bar hopping. Maddie and I both got a little tipsy, and at some point, the group started to dwindle. By midnight, it was just the two of us left. Now, here's the thing about Maddie. Esha was effortlessly touchy when she drank. Nothing over the top, just casual stuff, grabbing my arm when she laughed, leaning on me when she got tired. I never thought much of it before. But that night, something was different. We were walking back to my car when she suddenly shivered and went, "Damn, it's cold." Without thinking, I joked, "Well, if you freeze to death, I get your Spotify playlist." Instead of rolling her eyes or shoving me like she usually would, she grabbed my hand. Not in a casual, let me warm up kind of way, she interlocked our fingers. I laughed nervously, fully expecting her to let go after a few seconds, but nope, she just held on, swinging our hands slightly as we walked. I don't know what kind of black magic was in that moment, but my brain short-circuited, because suddenly I was hyper-aware of everything. The way her fingers fit between mine, the warmth of her skin against the cold night air, the way she slightly squeezed my hand every few steps, the faint scent of her perfume, something floral, something intoxicating. I swallowed hard, trying to act normal, but my body had other plans. My heart was racing, my face was burning, and the only thought running through my head was, what is happening right now? And then, because the universe wanted me to suffer, sighed and leaned her head against my shoulder. I froze. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't just drunk Maddie being friendly. This was something else. Before I could even process it, she mumbled, "You always make me feel safe." Bro, I was done. I don't even know how I drove home that night. All I know is that the second I got back to my apartment, I sat on my couch staring at my hand like it had just ruined my life. Because after years of thinking of Maddie as just my friend, suddenly I couldn't anymore. That one moment changed everything. I never told her. I don't think she even remembers it happening, but from that night on, I could never hold her hand or anyone else's without thinking about it. So I had this friend, let's call her Emily. We had been tight since our freshman year of college, always joking around, sharing personal stories, and generally just vibing as close friends do. She was one of those effortlessly beautiful people who never seemed to notice how attractive she was, which somehow made it worse. But I had never seen her as more than a friend. Until that moment, we were hanging out at my apartment one evening, just the two of us, watching some random horror movie. It wasn't anything special, we'd done this a million times before. But about halfway through, Emily got spooked by a jump scare and did that thing. You know, the one where a girl flinches, grabs onto your arm, and then just stays there. Her hand was gripping my forearm, her fingers wrapped around it like she was holding on for dear life. I laughed, thinking she'd pull away in a second, but nope, she tightened her grip. And then God help Mesh pressed her face against my shoulder. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She was scared, it was normal, whatever. But then my dumb brain decided to betray me. I suddenly noticed things. The warmth of her skin. The way her fingers slightly trembled as she held onto me. The faint smell of her shampoo vanilla and coconut, which was apparently my kryptonite. The way her breath hit my collarbone in soft, rhythmic waves. And then she sighed. Not just any sigh-on of those deep, slow, relaxed ones that send chills down your spine. I felt my whole body stiffen, and that's when the realization hit me like a freight train. Oh no, I'm into this, like really into this. I was suddenly hyper-aware of everything. My pulse picked up, my face felt hot, and I started freaking out internally. This was Emily, best friend. What was happening to me? The worst part? She didn't even notice. She just stayed there, holding onto my arm like it was a goddamn lifeline, while my brain was going through 5 stages of grief. Eventually, the movie ended, she stretched, gave me a casual, that was scary as hell, and left like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I sat there questioning my entire existence. From that night on, things felt different for me. I started noticing her more, how she laughed, how her lips curved when she smiled, how she'd absent-mindedly play with her hair. I don't know if she ever realized what she did to me that night, but let's just say I was never the same after that. This happened years ago, but I still think about it from time to time because it messed me up in ways I wasn't prepared for. So I had this friend, let's call her Sophie. We'd been friends since high school, super close, totally platonic. She was the kind of girl who had zero filter, always made dirty jokes, and had no issue playfully smacking me or roughhousing like one of the guys. I never once thought of her in a romantic way. She was just Sophie loud, hilarious, and a little chaotic. Anyway, flash forward to college. A group of us had rented this cabin for the weekend. Classic, let's get away, drink too much, and make bad decisions kind of trip. The cabin wasn't huge, so we were all doubling up in rooms. I got paired with Sophie, which didn't seem like a big deal. We'd crashed on couches together before, so whatever. The first night, we'd all been drinking, playing stupid card games, and just generally being idiots. At some point, Sophie got way too drunk and needed help getting to bed. I helped her to our room, got her some water, and made sure she wasn't about to puke before I climbed into my bed. Here's where things went south. At around 3 a.m., I woke up because I felt something touching me, like full-on skin-to-skin contact. It took me a second to realize Sophie had somehow managed to roll over and basically drape herself over me in her sleep. Her leg was hooked around mine, her arm was across my chest, and worst of all, her face was practically buried in my neck. And I mean warm breath, soft skin, slightly messy hair all over me. My brain went into DEFCON 1. I was not supposed to find this attractive. I had never thought of Sophie that way. But my body, my traitorous, idiotic body, it had other plans. My heart started pounding and I became painfully aware of how soft she felt against me. And then, just to make things worse, she moved. She mumbled something in her sleep and nuzzled even closer, her lips brushing against my neck. I was done, absolutely cooked. I knew I needed to move her off me, but I also didn't want to wake her up and make things awkward. So I just laid there, stiff as a board, staring at the ceiling and questioning every life decision that had led me to this moment. Eventually, she shifted again, rolled over, and I finally managed to breathe. I barely slept the rest of the night. The next morning, she woke up with zero memory of what happened. Meanwhile, I had to sit across from her at breakfast and pretend I hadn't just experienced a full-blown existential crisis. To this day, I don't think she ever realized what happened. We stayed friends, nothing ever came of it, but that night definitely changed how I saw her. And yeah, I may or may not have developed a tiny crush on her for like 6 months afterward. 10/10ths accidental turn on. Would not recommend. So, this happened a few years ago with my best friend at the time. Let's call her Sophie. We were ridiculously close-like, finishing each other's sentences, roasting each other 24/7. Deep talks at 2 a.m. kinda close. She was one of the boys, never acted differently around me, and I never thought of her in any romantic or physical way. Until this one night, Sophie had just broken up with her boyfriend and was completely wrecked. We were at my place, she was venting about everything, and I was doing my best to be a supportive friend. At some point, she just collapsed onto my bed, face down, groaning about how relationships suck. I sat beside her, laughing, trying to lighten the mood. Then she turned over, looked up at me and went, why can't all guys just be like you? And that was the first tiny crack in the just friends barrier. I tried to brush it off as her being emotional, but then she reached out and pulled me down next to her. Nothing crazy, just a lazy, exhausted, don't leave me alone in my sadness kind of pull. I ended up lying there next to her, staring at the ceiling, and I swear the air in the room changed instantly. Like, 1 second we were just best friends, the next, I was very aware of how close we were. Her arm brushed against mine. Her leg was casually resting against my thigh. Her hair smelled insanely good. And then she turned to face me. I turned too, purely out of reflex, and suddenly we were nose to nose. Bro, I could feel her breath. She was just looking at men at sad anymore, just looking. Her eyes flickered down for a split second, you know what I mean? And my brain went into absolute panic mode. Do not kiss her. Do not kiss her. Do not ruin this friendship. But I couldn't move. I was frozen in place. My body was literally betraying me. Then, the worst, or best, thing happened. She sighed and slid her hand up my chest. Not in a seductive way, more like an unconscious, absent-minded, too comfortable for this to be normal kind of way. And that's when it hit me. I was turned on by my best friend, by Sophie, who I had seen burp the alphabet, who had accidentally farted in my car multiple times, who I had never, not even once, thought of in that way before. I felt actual betrayal from my own body. I had to get out of there before I did something stupid, so I awkwardly sat up and mumbled something like, I should probably get some water or something. She just blinked at me, smirked, and went, wow, that flustered, huh? I was done. I played it off like she was imagining things, but I spent the rest of the night fighting for my life. Nothing ever happened between us, and we never talked about it. But from that moment on, my brain never let me forget that Sophie, me best friend, was low-key fine as hell. Back in college, I had a really good friend, Mia. We were close like, texting daily, hanging out all the time, totally comfortable around each other. She was one of those effortlessly cool people who always smelled amazing and had this laugh that could make you forget about everything else. Anyway, one night, we were at a mutual friend's apartment, just chilling with a small group. It was late, we were all half asleep, and somehow I ended up sitting on the couch while Mia stretched out next to me, using my thigh as a pillow. No big deal, right? Wrong. At one point, she shifted in her sleep, and her lips accidentally brushed against my leg-bare skin because I was wearing shorts. It was so light, so unintentional, but holy did my brain betray me. Suddenly, I wasn't thinking about my tiredness or the conversation happening in the background. I was hyper-aware of everything, the warmth of her breath, the slight pressure of her head on my lap, the fact that she was completely relaxed against me. And then, just when I thought I could shake it off, she did that thing people do when they're half asleep. She let out a soft sigh, shifted slightly, and nuzzled into my leg. My soul left my body. I must have tensed up because she groggily opened her eyes, looked up at me, and mumbled, "You okay?" No, Mia, I am not okay. But obviously, I just played it off with a stiff laugh, like, yeah, just trying not to wake you. She gave me a sleepy smile, patted my thigh, and whispered, "You're comfy." Then she went right back to sleep. I spent the next hour staring at the ceiling, questioning every life choice that led me to that moment. We never talked about it, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't even remember. But me, I'll be on my deathbed, thinking about that one F, King and Knight. I had a friend, Emma, who I'd known since college. We had that super chill, sibling-like friendship roasting each other. Late night talks, zero awkwardness. At least, that's what I thought. One summer, a group of us rented a cabin for the weekend. It was one of those classic setups. Bonfire, drinks, music, and a whole lot of nostalgia. Late into the night, after everyone else had crashed, Emma and I were the only ones still awake. She was lying on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I was sitting on the floor next to her. Out of nowhere, she nudged me with her foot and said, "My legs are so sore from that hike. Can you massage them?" I hesitated for a second, but was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So I started massaging her calf, totally innocent, until it wasn't. The second I applied pressure, she let out the softest moan-like, not over the top, but just enough to short-circuit my entire brain. I paused. She didn't say anything, just shifted slightly, like she was getting comfortable, and casually added, "That feels amazing." And suddenly, I was painfully aware of everything. How warm her skin was, the way her breathing changed, the fact that we were alone in the dim glow of the fireplace, her legs in my hands, and the tiniest part of me wondering if this was still just friendly. I tried to play it cool, big mistake. She must have noticed something in my face because she smirked and teased, "Careful, you might make me fall in love with you." Excuse me? I laughed, Washington Y too nervously, and quickly dropped her leg. Okay, that's enough therapy for one night. She just chuckled and rolled over, mumbling, "Coward." I didn't sleep a single second that night. And the worst part? She probably doesn't even remember it. Meanwhile, I'm still out here questioning my entire existence. I had a friend, let's call her Sophie. We'd been close for years, strictly platonic. No flirting, no weird tension. Just two people who could talk about anything and everything. One night, we were at a small get-together at a mutual friend's place. It wasn't a wild party, just drinks, music, and a handful of people chilling. At some point, Sophie and I ended up on the couch together, both a little tipsy but not drunk. She was wearing an oversized hoodie, legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone. At one point, she leaned against me slightly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And then she asked me to crack her back. Now here's the thing, I've cracked plenty of backs before. It's no big deal, but for some reason, this was different. She turned around and sat between my legs, pulling her hoodie up slightly so it wouldn't get in the way. Skin-on-skin contact, warm, soft. I placed my hands on her back, pressing gently at first, then a little firmer. I could feel her breathing. I adjusted my grip, pulled her back into me, and crack. She let out this deep, satisfied sigh and tilted her head back onto my shoulder. I was not prepared. The way she just melted into me for a second, the sound she made, the way she grabbed my arm and squeezed it like it was instinct, every rational thought evaporated. I froze, completely. My brain was screaming, "What is happening? What does this mean?" And then, just as casually as she leaned into me, she sat back up, stretched, and grinned. "Damn, that was good. You've got magic hands." I laughed it off. I had to. But I was so painfully aware of how close we had just been, how her body had fit perfectly against mine, how for a brief second, it felt like something way more than just cracking a back. The worst part? She didn't think twice about it. Meanwhile, I spent weeks questioning my entire existence. I had a friend, let's call her Lena. We'd known each other for years, super close, the type to share everything without a second thought. No weird tension, no flirting, nothing like that. Until one night completely wrecked my brain. It was summer, and a group of us went on a camping trip. The place was remote, no cell service, just the sound of the forest and a lake nearby. The first night, we stayed up late around the fire, drinking and talking about dumb things. At some point, people started heading to their tents, but Lena and I stayed up, just the two of us, talking about life. We were sitting close, wrapped in blankets because it had gotten cold. It was peaceful, nothing unusual. Then she yawned, stretched out, and leaned against me, not in a, "oh, I like you" way, but in a, "you're warm and I'm comfortable" way. I thought I was fine, but then, without thinking, she grabbed my hand and started tracing circles on my palm with her fingers. I immediately malfunctioned. This was the kind of casual intimacy that messes with your head. Soft fingers, absent-minded movements, warm skin. She wasn't even looking at me, just staring at the fire, totally unaware that my soul had just left my body. I should have pulled away. I should have said something, but I just sat there, frozen, pretending like I wasn't having a full-blown crisis. Then, out of nowhere, she mumbled, "Your hands are nice." What? What do you mean? I must have made a weird noise because she looked up at me, a little smirk on her face. "What? You've got nice hands. They're strong but soft. I like that." "Ma'am? Excuse me?" I was trying so hard to keep my breathing normal, but then she squeezed my hand before letting it go like it was nothing. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, completely shattered. The next day, she acted completely normal, like she didn't just short-circuit my entire brain. And to this day, I still don't know if she knew what she did or if she was just being casually affectionate, but either way, it changed something in me. So, I had this friend, let's call her Emma. We'd been close for years, totally platonic, never anything remotely flirty. She was the kind of girl who could walk into a room and have everyone's attention without even trying. But to me, just Emma, my buddy. Until one night, we were at her apartment, just chilling and watching some dumb show on Netflix. She had just come back from the gym and was wearing those damn leggings. You know the ones. The kind that make you rethink your entire belief system. But I was keeping it together, I swear I was. Then, at one point, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when she suddenly stretched her legs out and put her feet in my lap. Okay, fine, whatever, we're friends. This is normal. Then she went, "Massage my feet?" I was like, "What? Number ew." And she just gave me this look, half amused, half challenging, before wiggling her toes and saying, "Come on, be useful." So, like an idiot, I did it. Biggest mistake of my life. Because the moment I started, she let out this long, soft moan. I froze. She didn't even notice. She just closed her eyes and went, "God, that feels amazing." Meanwhile, I was over here having a full-blown existential crisis. Like, this is my best friend, my bro, my unshakable, untouchable, off-limits friend, and she just moaned. And then she goes, "You have magic hands, keep going." I should have left, I should have stopped, but no, I kept going. And the worst part? She kept reacting, shifting slightly, stretching out, making these little satisfied noises. At one point, she even sighed, If a guy did this to me on a date, I'd probably marry him. Ma'am. Hello? I wanted to say something. I wanted to call her out, but I also didn't want to die on her couch that night. So I said nothing, just sat there internally combusting while she continued ruining my entire perception of her. And the next day, she acted completely normal, like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I was just sitting there, staring at my hands like they had committed a crime. So I had this friend, let's call her Sophie. We had been close for years, the type of friends who could roast each other without mercy, but also drop everything to be there for one another. She was gorgeous, but I had mentally placed her in the off-limits category because we were just friends. That was a mistake. One night, we were at a party, and for whatever reason, she was way more touchy than usual. Nothing crazy, just leaning on me when she laughed, playfully shoving me, grabbing my wrist whenever she wanted to drag me somewhere. I chalked it up to the drinks, even though she wasn't drunk, just tipsy at best. Then it happened. Some guy at the party was flirting with her hard, like full-on hand on her waist, whispering in her ear, the whole thing. I wasn't jealous, or so I told myself, but I remember thinking, damn, I didn't realize she was into that kind of attention. Apparently she wasn't, because mid-conversation, she suddenly turned to me, grabbed my face with both hands, and kissed me. Not a quick fake help me out kiss. A slow, soft, deliberate kiss. My brain shut down completely. By the time she pulled away, the guy was gone, and I was just standing there like an idiot. I managed to stutter out, what was that? And she, still holding my face, looked me dead in the eyes and said, I needed an excuse to do that at least once in my life. Bro. What? I was done. Game over. Controller unplugged. I don't even remember how the rest of the night went. All I know is that for the next 2 weeks, every time we hung out, my brain kept replaying that moment like a broken record. Worst part? She acted like it never happened. Like she hadn't just completely fried my entire existence. And me? Oh, I tried to pretend it was nothing. I failed. So, I had this friend. Let's call her Emily. We'd known each other since high school, and by the time we were in our mid-20s, we were like siblings who never actually fought. Super close, zero tension, completely platonic. Or at least, that's what I thought. One night, she invited me over for a movie night. Nothing unusual, we'd done it 100 times. She was always way too comfortable around me, sitting however she wanted, walking around in pajama shorts, stealing food off my plate, all that. I never thought anything of it. That night though, that night changed something in my brain forever. She picked a horror movie, which was already a red flag because she hates horror movies. Like full-on hides under blankets, jumps at every sound, makes me check behind doors level of scared. So of course, halfway through the movie, she was glued to my arm. Every time a jump scare hit, she'd grab onto me, squeezing my arm way tighter than necessary. I thought it was funny at first, but then I started to notice things. Like how she was practically curled up against me, or how warm she felt, or how her hand, which was gripping my arm, was now just kind of resting there. And then the blanket incident. At some point, she got cold. I swear it was on purpose, so she grabbed the blanket and pulled it over both of us. Bro. Now we were fully sharing a blanket in the dark on her couch, watching a movie that she was clearly not even paying attention to anymore. At this point, I was fighting for my life. Then the worst possible thing happened. She shivered. I don't know if it was real or fake, but I was doomed either way, and tucked her head against my neck. Her actual face was on my neck. I felt her breath. I don't even remember what scene was playing on the screen because my brain short-circuited. And then she spoke. Soft as hell, completely casual, like she didn't just ruin my entire existence. You smell really nice. Bro, what was I supposed to do with that information? I literally froze. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even think. I was like, thanks? Why did I say it like a question? And then she laughed. Not a normal laugh. A low, teasing, I know exactly what I'm doing to you kind of laugh. I was done. I made some dumb excuse about needing water, classic escape move, practically sprinted to her kitchen, and stood there gripping the counter like I had just survived a near-death experience. She never brought it up, never acknowledged what happened, just kept acting like we were totally normal best friends. But, let me tell you, I never saw her the same way again.